We are now live. Welcome to the show, everyone. A California farmer weatherization program has been giving illegal aliens free appliances and solar panels, and unsurprisingly, a lot of the money moved between the various NGOs involved has some dubious accounting. Corruption abounds, and that is just one story popping up as the Justice Department continues its war on fraud. And in New York City, Mayor Mamdani is looking to confiscate apartment buildings from landlords to give them to responsible stewards. I know we're all getting sick of news about Mayor Mamdani, but it's important that we talk about why socialists like to take your property and why they're gaining popularity, unfortunately, across the country. And for Unhinged, a podcaster imagines a post-Trump world and asks if Trump supporters should be basically punished for their vote. All of this on episode 538 of the In the Tank podcast. Welcome to the In the Tank podcast. I am Linnea Lukin, your host, and as always, we also have Jim Lakely, Vice President and Director of Communications at the Heartland Institute, Sam Karnick, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute, and Chris Talgo, Editorial Director and Socialism Research Fellow, also, as you can see by his cool hat, of the Heartland Institute. And as always, we also have producer Andy Singer in the background, keeping us moving along. Really quick here, guys, before we get started, if you want to support the show, you can go to heartland.org/inthetank and donate there. Please also click the thumbs up to like this video. I see you guys are watching live right now. You can do it right now. And remember that sharing it also helps to break through some of that suppression that YouTube has on our channel. Even just leaving a comment helps us with the algorithm as well. If you're an audio listener, you can help us out by leaving a nice review. Okay, guys, how's everybody doing? I hear that the Midwest is having some good weather. I am having bad weather. Or at least I think so. It's like 90 degrees and humid and raining.
It is perfect weather up here in Northern Illinois. I mean, it's going to be no hotter than maybe 80 or 81 degrees. It'll be in the 70s for the next 5 days with no rain and all sunshine. I feel like I'm just going to experience San Diego for about a week. So it's fun.
Same is true here.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. So I'll be up there. All righty. Well, I'll move us into our Unhinged segment here. I've titled that White Gates for Harris thing just cracks me up every time. It's
yeah,
the most cringy. Yeah, anyway, so this video that we are going to show you guys is of a progressive podcast host named David Pakman. Relatively popular, I think. I've never heard of him before this, but it seems like he has a large following. And he is looking forward to a post-Trump world. He's very hopeful of that. He offers us a very good reason for why progressives cannot ever be allowed to be in control of the country again. Let's see why. Oh, nope, that was my funny meme.
We do with the Trump supporters once Donald Trump is gone? We have to figure it out. Now, at some point, whether it's sooner or later or kind of soon or, whenever, the Trump era is going to end. Trumpism may continue. We don't know yet. The damage from Trump will last beyond Donald Trump's presidency. But at some point, Trump will be gone. And when that happens, there is a question that it doesn't seem a lot of people are thrilled to be dealing with, but we're going to have to deal with it, which is what do we do with the tens of millions of people who voted for Donald Trump, sometimes not once, not twice, but 3 times. Now, I am not talking about the elected officials. I'm talking about regular voters, your neighbor, your cousin, the guy at the gym, the parent at your kid's school. Do we treat them like they simply made a political mistake? Or do we treat them like they participated in something so corrosive to democracy that we can no longer see them in a normal way anymore? I think.
Yeah, that's it.
You are made of stupid.
Yeah. So, boy, that's nice. What a lovely thought. What are we gonna do with Trump supporters, Jim? What are we gonna do with Trump supporters?
What we're probably going to do is they're going to pick the president after this one, and he will be pretty angry about that selection as well. Let's remember, Donald Trump didn't only win a electoral college landslide. He didn't only pick up every single swing state, all 7 of them. He also won the popular vote. The majority of this country supports Donald Trump and his agenda. And he is sitting there saying, what are we going to do with all of these people? It's actually sounds kind of Nazi to me, to be honest, because they really were curious. What are we going to do with these people, these undesirables? You know what's corrosive to democracy? Treating people who disagree with your politics as subhuman enemies that need to be quote unquote dealt with. There isn't even any debate about this, although there kind of used to be, about where did from where did our divisive politics of today originate? And the left in the media likes to blame Donald Trump, and surely he has some blame. But the problem is that the left, that progressives they cannot take the L ever. You lost. The majority of the American people do not agree with your corrosive, to use the term he used, agenda. And they reject it and reject it and reject it. It is not a national election winning set of policies. The people don't want it. We may have socialism, we may have commies elected in New York City, which is what we do, but that agenda is not for the rest of the country, for the most of the country. And the farther they go down this road, the worse it's going to be. It is not conservatives or Trump supporters or MAGA hat wearing people that disinvite family members from Thanksgiving, who say, I'm not going to speak to my father ever again because he voted for Trump. The absolute, this segment is called Unhinged for a reason. It is unhinged. The absolute lack of self-awareness or self-reflection. And this is I would gather to say that this is a majority opinion of many Democrats, longtime Democrat voters, and certainly almost all progressives, is that there is something mentally wrong and probably dangerous about people who disagree with their politics. There is no self-reflection ever that maybe they're the ones who are out of touch. If we're in the majority, the people who voted for Donald Trump are in the majority, and you don't hear anybody on the right saying, what are we going to do with all of these wacky progressives who believe and want to push an agenda that the American people have rejected over and over? There's never talk about what are we going to do with these people. It's infuriating, and I think it's also a little bit chilling, because in the history of the rise of left and communism, the Bolsheviks, for instance, in Russia were not a majority, not even close. Yet they were able to seize power and then do what this guy is implying, punish their political enemies. So it's something to take seriously and keep an eye on. But my God, our divisive politics is not because your Uncle Jim or your Aunt Jane has a Trump flag in front of their house. That's not where our divisive politics from, because most people on the right just want to be left alone. They want to live and let live. Progressives will never get out of your face, and they think they have to deal with people in a societal way, with people who just don't agree with their politics.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah, Chris Nisbet from our audience here made a point. He goes, "Hey, I thought Trump was some kind of dictator king who was never going to stand down. What's going on with
Oh, that's right.
them talking about elections in the future?" Yeah, I thought elections were over. I thought Trump was the dictator king too. Oh well. Um, I guess we're going to play both sides of it at all times.
When I saw it and heard this character speaking, I immediately thought, "Are you joking? I mean, come on, bring it on. Are you kidding? I mean, there's a big difference between 2019 and today. We've been through a lot in this time, and we know that there is no compromise coming from the other side. There is no acceptance of reality. So if you're and they, it's because they've been able to get away with it throughout their childhood, throughout their adulthood, such as it is. Nobody's ever held them accountable. Well, if you try something, this is not a tough guy as far as I could tell. I mean, okay, bring it on. Don't start something that you are not ready to finish and that you don't have a plan to finish. You're not going to intimidate us anymore.
I pity the fool.
Exactly. I do too. You're not going to intimidate people anymore. That's over. I mean, we saw what your best are. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, that's what you have to throw at us? Zoran Mamdani, who smirks while he talks about confiscating people's property? It's not going to work, folks. This is serious. When you're talking about what do we do about people, you're asking for it, and you're going to get it. I find it very interesting and somewhat amusing.
So frankly, I don't think this moron had the brain power to come up with this idea on his own. So I think he stole this straight from Katie Couric because she said basically the exact same thing a few years ago. So I mean, I could not care less about this, imbecile. But when people like Katie Couric, who do have an actual following, are saying stuff like that, I do think it trickles down, and that's probably what happened here.
Well, she was the one who said after Trump's first election that we basically have to re-educate all of his voters, right? Round them up, put them in camps, keep their eyes open like Clockwork Orange, and make them worship the state and the Democratic Party. I mean, the thing that just bothers me about it, I know you guys are kind of blowing it off, but it's just the instinctual speech from progressives is that it's immoral to disagree with my politics. That's their attitude. And so there's something morally wrong with you. And we have to, they're okay with letting violent criminals wander the streets, but we're going to have to do something about these peaceful MAGA aunts and uncles out there in the Midwest. And, they have to be dealt with, but not the criminals on the street.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we
but
already
why do you think he thinks this way? Because I think he's a young guy who probably went to all public schools all his life, probably, sits on social media, probably, has been totally, brainwashed by mainstream media and, public schools. So I don't really think he is necessarily the problem. I think he's more the messenger. But I do take umbrage with someone like Katie Couric, who totally knows better. And she resorted to that years ago, setting the stage for an insignificant, idiot like this.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think it's unprecedented in American politics for people to be talking so, especially people in power, to be talking so brutally about the voters. Usually they save their ire for the candidates.
Mm.
But with Trump, it's a whole other thing. I mean, and it does, we probably, slightly, I don't want to use the word unprecedented because I don't know, but I'm going to guess that there weren't like thousands and thousands of boat parades and stuff for like any other president. I think Trump probably, for whatever reason you want to go with, inspires a lot of very kind of like public displays.
Did you notice how shallow his quote unquote argument was? He didn't name one policy or one program to, support his argument. because he has no evidence, because all he can do is spew talking points with no evidence, no data to back it up. And when you get into a deep conversation with someone like that, they're pretty much instantly exposed as nothing more than capable of just preaching talking points. They can't think deep. They can't think for themselves. He cannot think for himself. All he can do is say things that he's been basically heard 5,000 times for the last 5 years. That's what he does.
Yeah, I think the point I'm trying to make kind of clumsily here is that maybe the reason why they're so utterly, especially ticked off at the voters for Trump is one, because they hate Trump more than they've probably hated any other oppositional candidate ever. And two, the support of Trump is a lot more overt from his voters, from a large portion of his voter base than previous administrations. Like after Bush was elected, you didn't have people like driving with big, maybe you'd have a Bush Cheney sticker on your car or a Reagan Bush sticker on your car or something in the 80s. But like they didn't have cardboard cutouts of George Bush in the window of their house looking out on the street. They didn't have a flag with Bush's name on it, the way that people put like Trump flags in their
But social
front
media didn't
yard.
also exist back then, so people didn't
Yeah.
have this sort of echo chamber and this sick, poisonous platform that people just go to and doom scroll on. So guess what? I mean, I was alive during those days, and people, thought about it, but they had a lot other more important things on their plate. And social media has definitely changed that, in my opinion, for the far worse.
We saw an indicator of this in California recently, where a man whose house was festooned with Trump paraphernalia was killed.
Yeah.
He was killed. He was just an old guy who was not harming anyone except the fragile egos of people who didn't like the idea that there was somebody who thinks differently from them within within their visual field at times, and as they were driving through their neighborhood. That's okay. You got one. You got an old guy who couldn't defend himself. You got Rand Paul punching him in the back with the back of the head with a sucker punch. We're not going to be sucker punched. Not the rest of us dudes. I'm only saying this because it's true. I'm saying this because we need to know exactly what's at stake. We need to know exactly what's likely to happen. And what's likely to happen is the reaction from the people that have supported President Trump and who are so hated. The reaction is going to be very simple. Go ahead, make my day. It's that simple. And boy, I don't want to see it, but I think there's a good chance we will.
Well, I mean, here in Chicago, they fly the W flag, but that's for when the Cubs win. But you're right, Linnea, nobody was flying W flags for George W. Bush the way people fly Trump flags for Donald Trump. And there's actually a couple of very logical reasons for this. It's because the media and the left and the Democratic Party have done nothing but lie about Donald Trump and attack him in the most vicious ways. Also including trying to assassinate him 3 times. So it is an instinct, it's a human instinct to stick up for your guy. And so you want to defend, you want to show that support because he is under constant attack. He's not a racist. He's not a Nazi. He's not a tyrant. Democracy isn't over. He didn't cheat. All of this stuff are lies that are perpetuated by our legacy media that not quite half of this country believes as absolute gospel. So the reaction to that is to defend him against these unfair attacks. That's where a lot of this comes from.
So in the progressive future, it will be the gulag for us, and it will be free solar panels for illegal aliens. Which brings us to our next topic, which is about free solar panels for illegal aliens and the extent of fraud in the U.S. in general. So this story that I'm going to move us along here to comes from Chris Rufo and Austin Hufford in a story that I think was broken in the City Journal. So I'm going to read from there. California is giving free solar panels to illegal aliens. The initiative, called the Farm Worker Housing Component of the Low Income Weatherization Program, is part of California's sprawling multi-billion-dollar cap and trade system, which taxes carbon producers and redistributes approximately $3 billion a year to energy programs and left-wing social causes, all under the banner of fighting climate change, of course. Since 2019, California's government has earmarked $49 million for the Farm Worker Program, which operates through an opaque web that includes government agencies, nonprofit providers, and private contractors. California's Department of Community Services and Development selected a La Cooperativa, oh, please do not make me say Spanish. Oh no, Campesina de California. Sorry, I apologize greatly to our native Spanish speakers for that terrible butchering. A nonprofit that serves farm workers to administer the program. The cooperative, in turn, has partnered with a for-profit, minority-owned company, Maroma Energy Services, to help run the program, and contractors do the work of installing the solar panels and other appliances. So, these organizations have heavily advertised the program to California's 900,000 agricultural workers, half of which to 3/4 of whom are illegal immigrants. In the official documentation, California's Department of Community Services and Development acknowledges that non-citizens are eligible for the program and that they even accept identification from foreign governments. So just to pause here for a second, California will not let you require ID to vote, an American driver's license to vote, but they will take non-USA identification to let you get free stuff from the government. All right. Despite a $49 million budget and nearly 7 years of operation, the Farm Worker Weatherization Program has only provided services to about 2,000 families. That means that the state of California has allocated roughly $23,000 per household for its program to provide free solar panels, refrigerators, and other services. There's one problem. The same guy, Mauricio Blanco, seems to be connected to entities at multiple stages in the flow of funds. Blanco worked as a project manager for the cooperative, which has been awarded $10.7 million by the state. He's listed as an executive of Maroma Energy Services, which was granted $34 million from the cooperative for weatherization services since 2017, and is also CEO of the John Harrison contracting firm that appears to have done the installation work. So this is another one of these schemes where it's just a government program that is, I mean, the purpose of it clearly is to just like enrich these particular friends of the regime. And this is just one story of what seems to be, you know, real fraud and corruption here. On its own, probably wouldn't make for an entire segment, but this breaking at the same time that the Department of Justice is spearheading that massive task force on fraud. You know, that includes benefits programs, which the farmer weatherization program doesn't perfectly map onto, Sam, but it's part of this web of corruption that our bloated bureaucracy, you know, cultivates and I think maintains on purpose.
Yes. What's interesting to me is that there's always been corruption in all these programs. I mean, because the government spending is almost invariably about buying votes. There's very little that the government does that is legitimate. You have police on the state level. You have roads. Used to have post offices. We don't need them anymore. That's very nice that we don't. But there's very little, and you have to enforce contracts, valid ones, and so forth, and stop people from shooting one another and having duels over disagreements on contracts. That's it. There isn't much that the government really has a legitimate reason to do. And so when it does all these things, as it expands, it's all corruption. It's, it's corruption all the way down, as the old English woman said about turtles. And it truly is. The only way to get on top of this stuff is stop spending all this money at all. Don't spend it at all. Let people help one another if that's what they want to do, and let them be immoral, whatever you would call it, as a socialist if that's what they want to do. If you want to take people's resources and time and money away from them, you're a thief. That's all there is to it. And so these are thieves giving money to other thieves, and we're supposed to be shocked by this. The whole point of it is to empower and aggrandize themselves and one another, and to stay in power and get more power and get more grandeur. So that's how the government works. So we have to stop that. Well, how do you stop that? The only way is to take away the money. Don't give them the money. Don't let them put these taxes on your neighbors, because those taxes are ultimately falling on you. How are they falling on you? Because as you take away money from your neighbors and give it to thieves and grifters, you take it away from people who would profit from doing good in the world. For example, if you were to make farming more efficient and make food more abundant, you will be helping the world. People will give you money for that. But if you give that money to the government, you see exactly what happens in this instance and all over the country. So the fundamental problem is that we do good through government. We do not do good through government. What we do is mostly take away resources from people who intend to use them for good, and they want to use them for good so that it will benefit themselves. Go ahead, read Adam Smith. It won't hurt you. And whereas the government can only benefit themselves and their cronies. We don't have a free market. We don't have free enterprise. We have crony capitalism. We have cronyism. And we have got to tear this out, root and branch, and stop giving all this money to the government. That's the only way you're ever going to stop corruption.
I've got two thoughts on this, and I'll make it very brief. Number one, I think all that money should go to a fund to pay the victims of Cesar Chavez, because it has now come out that he was a prolific sexual assaulter. So that's one thing, and I'm serious about that, because that's a historical injustice that needs to be righted. And then the second thing I wanted to say is that the reason why this is happening is simple. California wants more illegals. Why does California want more illegals? They want more people. Why do they want more people? So they get more votes in Congress. That's what this is about. That is all this is about, because people, citizens, are fleeing California for Idaho, Montana, Texas, Florida. And California needs more people because they want more congressional seats. That's what this is about. And it's working for them, sadly. But at the same time, I do think that we could see a turning point in California soon. I do think that Spencer Pratt has a legitimate chance, at least, of winning the LA mayoral race. And also Steve Hilton, I think, has a very legitimate shot at becoming the next governor of California. So this could actually have a big turnaround here sooner rather than later.
Yeah, part of the reason why, this story came across my feed and I just thought it was kind of funny, but I normally, because it is, kind of just one specific example of the corruption or fraud that's been going on. But I think it's telling for the bigger picture about what's happening in California. And that was kind of the theme for this episode today, is from one coast to the other. We have this idea that we need to be giving people free stuff, seizing property, which is what happened to a lot of the people who lost their homes in the Palisades fire, and which is why Spencer Pratt is doing well. The reason, and our wonderful audience is joking about illegally voting for Pratt, because it's not like California is going to check your license or anything, right? But yeah, it's a bigger kind of vision of all this fraud that's going on, though, and the idea of just paying off your voters or courting people to move to your state with, gimmies, basically.
But this is even worse because it's going to illegals. That has to be
exactly.
that has to be emphasized here.
Yes. And I think that, everybody, when right now Chris is covered over with Kamala Harris, and it's kind of funny. Right now,
Me and Kamala are like that.
Yeah, the Minnesota fraud stuff really kind of exploded in Minneapolis because of Nick Shirley's, or not Nick Shirley. Who is it? That Nick Shirley, is that the right
Yeah, that was
person?
him. Yep.
Yeah, Nick Shirley's on the ground investigation of those daycare centers, and so that's really expanded into a whole lot of other areas. That's real journalism, right? But I think as soon as everybody heard about what was going on in Minnesota with their, like Somalian population, everybody kind of just like turned and looked at California because a guarantee, as bad as it is in Minnesota with stuff, with people taking advantage and cheating their social programs and all the fraud and everything, it is 100 times worse in California. And that's actually already begun to be investigated. And right now, California government is pretending like they were on top of this all along. But basically, once again, Shirley and also some other journalists were uncovering that there are a lot of fake hospice companies in California, especially Los Angeles County. And so CBS News has this article talking about the DOJ's new fraud and, fast track fraud enforcement policy. And I want to read to you guys a little bit from this article because it is kind of funny here. So CBS reports the federal government plans to speed up the review of certain whistleblower complaints related to fraud against benefit programs like Medicare. Federal officials told CBS News Wednesday. The officials said the move will help to fast track fraud enforcement. The U.S. Department of Justice reviews whistleblower complaints made under the False Claims Act, which is the main federal statute used to fight cases of alleged fraud against government programs, including Medicare and grants. These programs are federally funded and administered by states. Now, the DOJ Civil Division says it will prioritize those complaints to decide if it will continue with litigation, investigate further, or dismiss within a 60 to 120-day window. The state of California has also established a fraud task force where multiple agencies focus specifically on hospice fraud schemes. CBS News has been investigating hospice fraud for months. I highly doubt that they were investigating this before some of the right-wing journalists got in there. But anyway, one investigation examined the business and financial records of every hospice currently operating in Los Angeles County, applying the same indicators identified by state auditors as potential red flags for fraud. The analysis revealed that over 700 of the roughly 1,800 hospices in LA trigger multiple red flags for fraud as defined by the state. California Attorney General Rob Bonta says his office has brought criminal fraud cases against more than 100 defendants in the hospice industry and about 24 civil cases. That's just Los Angeles County. And that's just hospice fraud.
The Department of Justice, is important to know, only instituted this civil fraud section in April. That's just a couple of weeks ago. Listen, it's a month ago. And this has been going on for decades, this kind of fraud. And we've known it. And everyone has just apparently felt like, well, since it's all borrowed money anyway, we don't care. This is absolutely obscene that no president up until a month ago put together a civil fraud division in the Department of Justice to stop the waste of billions and billions, surely trillions of dollars of taxpayer money that have been stolen by grifters who have been helped, assisted by lawmakers, presidents, presidential administrations, and the courts. This is a conspiracy of absolutely monumental levels. It's hard to get your mind around how horrible and how awful this is. And the fact that no one until this, just a month ago, did anything about it is really, it tells you everything you need to know about how government works and what government is really for. Government is for the confiscation of wealth and goodies from people who have them to give to other people who will give you power and more power. And it just continues to grow and grow and grow because it can't do otherwise. That's the interesting thing. The only alternative is to blow it up. Stop allowing the government to take that money in the first place. Until you do that, this is just going to continue to grow.
I disagree. I think that we got this really under control in the late 1990s when the Republicans under Newt Gingrich actually passed a balanced budget, and Bill Clinton agreed that we need to get rid of fraud in welfare. We need work requirements. I think that was short-lived, unfortunately, but it just does go to show that I think within the American people, there's an appetite for the government not to waste their money, and it's going to take someone with a lot of backbone to go in there and do this, because I think a lot of the states. A lot of the presidents in the past have allowed the states to get away with this because it's an incestuous relationship, because the states get money from the federal government that gives the federal government some power over them, and some ability to kind of make them do things the way they want them to do them, because the money has strings attached, obviously. So I just think we are at a point where it's so unaffordable because we're now running $2 trillion deficits for the next 10 years to come. We can't keep doing this. The American people know that. I think Doge was a huge eye opener to people, how much fraud and corruption and waste and abuse there is. And I think that the time has come where the American people really want to try to get this in check. And hopefully we are at the beginning of that.
The one thing you could do that would at least slow things down and perhaps give you a little backward movement on it would be to block grant everything. Block grant everything. Just say, state, here's your money, spend it as you will, waste it as you will. Fine, we don't worry about it. That's your worry. But giving them money that is contingent on having more people in the program gets you what? More people in the program.
We could also have Article 5. The states
block grant everything.
Yeah, and the states do have levers at their control that they can pull. Article 5's never been done. I would love to see an Article 5 convention in the states say, you know what, we're going to actually reset the relationship between us and the federal government, because, last time I checked, it was the 13 states that formed the federal government, not the other way around. So the states formed the federal government. The federal government does not control the states.
I do agree with you, Chris, but I'm thinking that we'll get the aliens coming down to give us utopia before we get Article 5.
Oh, the aliens are already here. What are you talking about?
Well, I did want to say, too, that...
Go watch Disclosure.
Yeah, right. You know what, Chris, you've done it again. You've brought up aliens, and it completely made me forget what I was going to say. I think what I was going to say. Oh, right. Okay. Stephen Miller the other day, during a panel on this fraud stuff. Sam, I'm pitching this question at you because I really have no idea. I think he was exaggerating a bit, but Stephen Miller seemed to indicate that, or he outright said that if we were to get rid of all the fraud that's leeching off of our expenditures from the government, that we'd be able to balance the budget. I think that that's a pretty intense exaggeration, because I think that the fraud that they're estimating is on the count of, probably tens or maybe even hundreds of billions of dollars, and our debt or our off balance by like $1 trillion. But
JD Vance just came out and said it's at least $1 trillion.
Yeah.
Per year.
Oh, for the fraud? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They're tossing a lot of numbers around. What's your take on that, Sam?
I think just a quick sort of back of envelope calculation, or working it out in your head. I think he's probably right. It is on that level or more. There's something you have to remember. Everything's illegal, right, Linnea? Isn't everything illegal in this country? So pretty much everything that anybody does is fraud of some sort, as far as the government's concerned. So you could have people who the Congress intended to get the money, but they're actually getting it illegally, or getting these benefits illegally. But I think the key thing is that just the few places they've looked at with any care, Minnesota, and now looking at California a little bit, the moment you pick up the rock, incredible amounts of squirmy things come dashing out. And that says something. It says that, no, there is a lot more under that rock than anyone ever imagined. And you remember that I wrote an article in a Life, Liberty, Property piece that said that the corruption is greater than you ever imagined. And it is. I think that it probably is that at least, I don't know, half of what is spent on these entitlement programs is corrupt and is not even legally going to where it's supposed to go. Even with all the bad decisions Congresses and presidents have made, we should still be doing fine if there weren't all the cheating. So I suspect that it's true.
And it's not just the cheating; it's the programs that have been in place, the subsidies for big sugar that have been in place for more than a century. I mean, I can go through this, and it's just laughable. If you were just to take a chainsaw, like Elon wanted to, and just cut through the budget like that, you could get away with probably $3 to $4 trillion of spending cuts, and I bet you most Americans wouldn't even feel a difference.
No, I remember it was he's the president, or was the president of Purdue University now. He was governor of Mitch Daniels.
Mitch Daniels.
Yeah, I remember seeing him at a CPAC, I don't know, a decade or so ago, and he was cutting the budget of Indiana quite a lot, and he wanted, and he said, yeah, people were crying, and the media was really mad, but after about 6 months, the people of Indiana realized that they didn't miss any of it, and that's generally the way it goes. I mean, it would be great, and I was really hoping this would happen with Doge, that the United States would do to its federal budget what Javier Milei did to Argentina's budget. And again, he came up against a lot of resistance to that from around the world. Predictions that he was going to throw Argentina's economy into a unpull-upable tailspin. And of course, the exact opposite has happened in Argentina. He'll probably be reelected with even a larger mandate than before. But I just had, my mind went to that thing where he was like picking all these federal departments in Argentina on a whiteboard, pulling them off, gone, that he said in Spanish. And so, look, I mean, just to get back to the topic at hand before I got dropped off this program, apologies, nobody noticed, I guess. That's fine. That's just fine. But it makes me think, is there a single green program that is not a complete scam? And the answer is no, they're all scams. There is actually no justification whatsoever for the federal government or any state governments or any government whatsoever to be involving itself in the market for so-called green energy technologies, be it solar panels in this case. And there's certainly no justification for having taxpayers pay to give solar panels to illegal immigrants who have no right to be in this country, let alone a right to our tax dollars. That's absolutely outrageous. I don't know, 30 years ago, not even Democrats would have done this so brazenly, but now it's just part and parcel of what it means to be a Democrat today. But this whole scam, as Linnea, you described it while reading the story, reminded me of the same. It's the same scam that Stacey Abrams, the twice not governor of Georgia, had going.
Same thing.
Yeah, EPA. I saw just a tweet the other day, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, because I was wondering about this. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin specifically said about that program that Stacey Abrams was scamming from, that he claimed to have clawed back all $2 billion of the grant that Joe Biden's EPA gave her organization that just the previous year had only $100 in the bank. They go from $100 to $2 billion. And I remember visiting the website. The purpose of this nonprofit that gets our tax money, $2 billion of it, is to purchase and distribute energy efficient appliances to poor people, especially in the South. You may think that's a good idea, but my tax dollars should not be paying for it. And it's actually none of those appliances, very few of those appliances, just like this right here, as you described it while reading the story, Linnea. Very few of the poor that are supposed to benefit from these enormously expensive programs actually benefited from it at all. It's all about paying the middlemen, a huge parade of middlemen that then kick money back to the Democrats who gave them that grant in the first place. So they fill their own pockets, they throw a couple cents over to the poor, and then they kick the rest of the money back to political action committees that support Democrats in the next election. It reminds me of, I don't know if we covered it on this podcast or not, Governor Gavin Newsom announced a $20 million program to give free diapers to newborns. Every newborn's going to get 400 free diapers to help get a good start, fresh start in this world. The cost of that program was 50 cents per diaper. The cost of a diaper, when you buy them in bulk at Costco, is at most 15 cents. So where do you think the rest of that money goes? If it's 5 times the cost, it goes in the pockets of all these NGOs, which we're going to talk about. It's a very big part of the commie confiscation and seizing of property are these NGOs, these lefty NGOs that are just swimming in billions and untold billions of dollars of our tax money to supposedly help marginalized communities or poor people, when it's all a payola scam. It's all to funnel money politically to Democratic candidates and to enrich themselves and their friends when they retire from politics. It's all a scam and a setup. All of these programs need to be, they wouldn't survive an audit from a recently graduated associate degree accountant, if we're being honest. It's all scams all the way down. And the worst scams really are all these green programs that you see that we highlight on here and on the Climate Realism Show.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, again, to the audience, the $49 million budget and 7 years of operation, they provided some kind of appliances. They don't go into details to, who got what or whatever. Some kind of appliances, including free solar panels, to only 2,000 families, which ends up working out to 23 grand per household. Those are some pretty nice. I hope they're at least getting those like Samsung smart refrigerators that you like knock on it and it turns the light on inside or whatever. I hope they're getting something cool for that. I hope they're getting the good Tesla wall batteries. I guarantee they're not. I guarantee they're getting bottom shelf appliances, cheap as possible. And they're also just somehow managing to disappear all of that funding.
Now, Linnea, giving people those very new refrigerators is actually a good scam because they're going to need a new one in 2 or 3 years. Yeah, unlike a real refrigerator that lasts literally forever.
Yep. All those people with their garage refrigerators that they've had since like 97 or something. They're still going strong.
I do have a garage refrigerator that has been here forever.
All right. So we are going to take a ride to the other coast now and talk about commie confiscation of apartment buildings going on over there in New York, or that will soon start to go on. Rent control sounds like a good idea to the renter, but when those costs to operate a building and maintain it get higher, and landlords can't afford to pay for them because they can't raise rent so that they can accommodate those higher costs, the government then wants to come in and confiscate the property. So the government causes the problem with rent control, and now they get to take the property away. New York City Mayor Mamdani is basically announcing this as a major part of his housing crisis plan. So in places without rent control, owning and managing real property like rentals and apartment buildings is a fairly good thing to invest in. But there's a lot of risk there too, which is why it's always a good idea to diversify. And one way to do that is by investing in physical precious metals. Right. A lot of people in the conservative, libertarian, and emergency prep spaces will hit you with ads for buying precious metals. They're not wrong that they're a good investment, and it'll be hard for Mamdani to come steal it from you unless he pulls something like what the federal government did back in, what was it, the 1920s or 30s when they were confiscating people's gold. Anyway, if you want to be careful about who you buy, but you want to be careful about who you buy your metals from, at In the Tank, we trust Advisor Metals over all of those other guys. And that's because we know that the person running the place is the best of the best. A great friend of Liberty, Ira Brzezinski owns and is the managing member of Advisor Metals. He has decades of experience in precious metals and is the only person in the physical precious metals industry who has the Commodities Futures Trading Commission federal registration. What does all that mean for you? Well, it means everything that Ira or a member of his team says to you has to be factual. So there is no sketchy sales pitch or bait and switch. He is held to the highest ethical standards, and there's full transparency. If you want to diversify your investment portfolio and your savings, if you are planning for retirement and are concerned about economic uncertainty or Mayor Mamdani coming and stealing your apartment building, if you want a tangible asset that is easy to buy and sell, you can secure your assets with a wide range of physical precious metals by getting in touch with our friend Ira at Advisor Metals. He will make it easy for you. Please visit climaterealismshow.com/metals, and you can leave your information for Ira and get started with investing in precious metals and expand your portfolio. So go to climaterealismshow.com/metals, and when you talk to Ira, make sure you let him know that we are the ones who sent you. That helps us while you're helping your financial future by diversifying with precious metals from Advisor Metals. Boom. I did that. That was a pretty good one, I think.
That's top 10 right there for sure.
All right.
2026.
So, but my lead into that advertisement is the topic of this section here. And we actually have a video of Mamdani discussing his ideas as well, if we can pull that up.
I think Andy might be missing. No,
Through our new citywide campaign, Fix the City, we will focus on the worst landlords in New York City. When necessary, we will take aggressive legal action to remove negligent owners and property managers. And for buildings that have suffered chronic neglect, we will work to transfer ownership to responsible stewards. Stewards that include community land trusts, nonprofits, or even the tenants themselves.
Key phrase in that, will work to. He has zero authority to do that. Just want to make that abundantly clear right off the face.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I am going to pull this article, or Andy is going to pull this article for me from Town Hall that goes over a couple of the details of this block by block agenda. It's titled Zohran Mamdani just announced his plans to begin seizing and redistributing private property. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani kicked off his plan to fix the city's affordability crisis with his official housing policy agenda titled Block by Block, under which one of the first priorities is to allow the government to seize property from owners deemed negligent and redistribute it to so-called responsible stewards, a category that includes anyone from land trusts, nonprofits, or the tenants themselves. Despite Mamdani's claims that this time his own version of socialism will be different, it appears to be heading down the same familiar path, one that students of history expected upon his victory. Government redistribution of private property, however, is not the only pillar of his block-by-block agenda. He also vowed to fast-track the construction of low-income and government-subsidized housing while promising to impose price controls on those units that would limit rent to just a quarter of a tenant's income. Okay, so here we are on the path again, with the government creating the conditions necessary to get to seize those properties. Chris, you recently wrote a great op-ed about how the Democratic Socialists of America are making some super aggressive electoral pushes across the country. You wrote about Pennsylvania 3rd District Congressional candidate Chris Rabb, and I'm going to quote your words at you here. Rabb's policy pitch is simple. Guarantee as much free stuff as possible to some at the expense of others. According to his campaign website, Rabb supports universal basic guarantees, Medicare for all, housing, food and water, free transit, high-speed internet, childcare, income, and jobs. And this would include a universal basic income and a living wage for all. He also wants to revitalize public ownership because he argues government has lifted families out of poverty and provided sustainable and quality jobs during times of desperate need. I imagine that the consequences of Zohran Mamdani's policies are not going to probably materialize in time to convince people that these Democratic or otherwise socialist candidates are not good candidates, huh, Chris?
Yeah, so the Chris Rabb thing is pretty interesting because he is going to be in Congress because the Republicans are not going to run a candidate in that district for the November general election. So he is basically has his green light to Congress from right now going forward. And what I wanted to point out in that article was that he wants this all at the national level. So what he's saying is we need to get this all done at the national level, a national UBI, a national Medicare for all that kind of stuff at the federal level. The thing about Mamdani is I think he's saying things that he knows he cannot do. Just like he said that the peer-to-peer text that's coming through. No, it's not, because the New York City Council basically said we're not going to do that. He has to have approval from the New York City Council to do any of these things. And from the looks of it, and from what they've been saying, they're not going to approve all this stuff. So I think that Mayor Mamdani, he has a tendency to say these things as if they've are going to happen or have already happened, but they're not going to happen. And that's a great thing. So I hope that people use this as a learning experience and say, whoa, if he actually had the power, he would do all this crazy stuff. We got to make sure that we never let anyone in office who would even remotely do anything like that. He says he couches all this stuff as such, delicate, kid gloves words. Transfer ownership. No, you're actually going to take it from someone and give it to somebody else. You're going to literally take someone's property and give it to somebody else. That is straight up Soviet. So this is for the renters. Oh, this is for, slumlords. Doesn't matter. He's saying something that I think 99% of Americans, let me rephrase that. Maybe 70% of Americans at this point would say, whoa, that's pretty crazy. Probably 30% would say, yeah, that sounds about good to me. So that's where we're at. And it's really not good, because when you look at the polling, when you look at young people, I'm 43, so I don't count in this group anymore, but people who are basically 40 or under, guess what happens? They want this. Even conservatives who are 40 years and younger, they want this. They, like we talked about earlier, like I mentioned earlier, have been brainwashed. Public schools, public universities, social media, and all the other stuff, Hollywood, to think that actually this is totally affordable. This can be done, and we just have to have the courage and the ambition to do it. Well, you know what? This has happened 100 times in history, and it always fails, and it always turns out, awful. So this lesson they might have to learn themselves, and it's going to be a really difficult lesson to learn if they're going to learn it that way. Hope it doesn't
great
happen.
point. Great point by viewer Wheelman. If you think your current landlord is unresponsive, wait until the government is your landlord. That's a very, very good point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Do you remember when he was posting that video of going to these apparent slumlord apartments or whatever, and marking them down for all of their hazards or whatever, the code violations and whatnot. And he's marking them down for having flower pots on the fire escape and stuff. The landlord didn't do that. The landlord didn't smoke 10,000 cigarettes a year in the apartment building. These are the tenants that are making some of their own apartments, broken and dirty and gross. And so you can't just blame, or I guess you can, apparently Mamdani can just blame the landlord for that kind of thing.
But setting the rent freeze disincentivizes the landlord from modernizing and updating the property. So the genesis of the problem is the stupid rent freeze that's been in place in New York City for decades, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. All that does is help those who already have, the rent frozen, but it sucks for outsiders who can't get in on that. And that's the problem in New York City.
Well, yeah, and that's a major part of this point, is that, the government is making the problem, which Sam likes to say all the time. All of our problems are because of the government. And the housing thing in particular is all government mismanagement. Yeah, New York City is really expensive to live in. You know why? because one, it's a highly desirable place to live, even though it's falling to pieces right now. And also two, because the government has 10,000 different taxes and fees and levies on absolutely every single thing you do there.
And regulation, don't forget about
Yeah.
that. Zoning is just the tip of the iceberg. Building codes are not for safety. They're not. Think about it. You know what's for safety? Courts. Courts are for safety. If somebody harms you, you go to court. And if you have a non-corrupt justice system, you win. They don't do that anymore because they don't want to keep paying out for destructive activities that they could easily and at much lower cost solve. So that's what you get. And what happens here is that the building codes are for builders, and they're for investors. They're not for the common person. And those people, that 30% that you talked about, it probably is about right, but it might be much greater than that in New York City.
Oh, for sure.
But you saw those people, they were standing behind Mamdani as he was speaking. And I looked at those people and I thought, did any of these people ever build anything? Did any of these people actually get their hands dirty doing things? I mean, you look at them.
They built NGOs, Sam.
Yes, right, exactly. And who actually built those NGOs were actually regular people who were getting paid to do it. So this is all, the corruption is so intense and so vast, but it's all based on the premise that we get to decide who gets what. And that is the big difference. That is the fundamental difference between the left and the right. The left is all about what is the proper distribution of wealth. The right is all about what is the proper way for people to generate wealth. And you know what? If people don't want to generate wealth, that's their own darn business. But then they don't get any wealth that way. So I think you have the incentives in a much better place when that's your thinking. We've seen that in the fall of nation after nation and empire after empire that was all about coercion. And we've seen that in the triumph of, in particular, the United States and in part Europe, and the decline of those various places as they became lazy and weak and concerned more about distribution than production. If you leave people alone, they'll figure it out. They'll know, they will actually create the best use of resources over time and over space. That's what they will do, because you get more profit by using resources well. With government, you get more profit, more power by wasting resources. That's the big difference. And that is what we're looking at in 2026 in November. And that's what we're looking at in 2028. And that's what we're always looking at, because those are the only two ways to do government.
Well, we've got two videos here. We've got first the one from Mamdani talking about, code violations and stuff, I believe. If we can pull that one up, or I can put it on the stage, whoever.
Through our new citywide campaign, Fix the City, we will focus on the...
This one. The Instagram one, right?
Apartment in New York, only to find
here it is.
Rent, but application fees, amenity fees, credit score checks. In a city filled with old buildings that could use some tender loving care, some landlords are taking advantage of the housing market to gouge tenants with outrageous fees, all while leaving them trying to survive in homes with collapsing ceilings and sinking floors. It's time for that to change. We need a citywide crackdown on rental ripoffs. We need to take on the indignities from those landlords who demand more than their fair share. That's why our administration is organizing a series of rental ripoff hearings in every borough. This is a chance for you and your neighbors to speak directly with us about how you're getting ripped off. For the first time, our city is bringing this discussion directly to you. And it's only just the start. We're excited to share more information about these hearings soon. In the meantime, start taking notes so you can share with us how you're getting ripped off.
This is so ridiculous. I mean, the market determines prices, not an arbitrary idiot named Zoran Mamdani. And last time I checked, no one forced those people to enter into those rental agreements. I personally think my rent is too high, but guess what? I signed the contract, so I am responsible for that. I can't then say, "Oh, boo-hoo, woe is me. It's all your guys' fault." This is also, I got to go a little bit like 30,000 foot here. This is about the grievance culture. This is about envy. This is about loss of morality. This is about a bunch of people saying we don't have stuff that we want. They have stuff that we want. Give us their stuff. That's literally what this is about. And it's really,
class warfare. The kulaks are living too well. We have to go get them. Go get them, guys. And
it's also completely wrong because life is not a zero-sum game. Life is not a zero-sum game. You can, I mean, Jim, take it away. It's so frustrating.
we have another video here too. I think before Jim's comments, because I think some of you're the one who really wanted to play this one about Weaver here, Jim. So I want to make sure that we get to it. Because it's not just Mamdani by himself. It's not like he has a bunch of like rational people working under him and all. And no, it gets worse. And there are crazy people in New York. There are crazy people in Seattle. There are crazy people all over the place. Jim, if you want to introduce this in Chicago, if you want to introduce this video, Jim.
Yeah.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Yeah, we can play that all day. This video is Sia Weaver. She's the I have it labeled on the video. She heads basically the I think it's called the tenants co-op. There it is, New York City Office to Protect Tenants. She has said in the past, we need to elect more communists. This is not a progressive. This is not a social, democratic socialist. This is a communist who is in charge now, and she's going to be a big part of this new initiative by Zoran Mamdani of seizing property. She's actually said the government needs to have more of an ability to seize private property. She says home ownership is white supremacy. She said that home ownership is rooted in a racist and classist society. And by the way, her mother lives in a house in Tennessee that's worth more than $1 million. So if she's going to start seizing property, maybe they should start there. But even though she has vocal fry plus uptalk, which I apologize for inflicting this on everyone in our audience, but let's go ahead and play that video.
I think the reality is that for centuries, we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good. And we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
You know, the only way to get me and Sam and Chris and Linnea and most of the fans of this podcast to think about our private property differently, if we're looking at the barrel of a gun. That is the only way that I am going to be looking at my property, which I earned and which I enjoy and I have the right to enjoy, and which the Constitution in this country protects my ability to enjoy. The only way you're getting that property is from the pointy end of a gun. If you look at this whole program that Mamdani is doing, if you looked at the words on the sign on his lectern, block by block, that's what those words were chosen for a reason. That's what the military does to clear out a city of terrorists like in Iraq. That messaging is not an accident. There's nothing in Zoran Mamdani's rhetoric that is an accident. It's a threat. So step one, as you said earlier, Linnea, impose rent control plus higher property taxes and then lots of regulations. And now the landlords can't afford to fix up their places. Step two, give yourself the power to declare an apartment building not up to code. You're basically weaponizing the city's building department. And that way you can justify all the seizures you want on behalf of the people. And by the way, they want it all. Commies want all of it. They don't let some people have it. The people who get to actually have it and enjoy it are the people in power, and that ain't you, and it ain't me. Step 3, you give this enormously valuable property to your brown shirts in the NGOs, who are now instantly enormously wealthy because they stole property from other people. Billions of dollars potentially here is at stake of wealth seized and handed to party apparatchiks. That, as you said, Chris, is full Soviet. And of course, the big part of this, and which is why the progressives are getting behind this kind of idea, huge kickbacks for the progressives running for office and also running these programs. How the hell are NGOs qualified to be landlords? That woman, Sia Weaver, who we just talked about, she considers herself an expert on housing policy. She thinks she could be the landlord for every person in New York. Just look at her, listen to her. She is a complete moron, and she is an evil moron whose desire, whose envy, who is so wrong-headed. She thinks the moral path here is stealing the property of other people who earned it and built it. They're not qualified to be landlords. They don't know anything about creating capital and wealth. But they're really on brand as commies. They're really very interested in confiscating the wealth of other people and then redistributing it. No communist in the history of the world has ever created a cent of actual wealth. Their entire purpose in life is to steal from others who have made a success of their lives and then redistribute it and then live. Basically, they do live on that big pile of money. They get to enjoy a good life. The rest of us live in misery.
You know, what I find most ironic about her video in particular is how ironically deeply corporate she sounds when she talks about her, plans. Everything is shrouded in this weird HR speak that you only get at huge corporation HR departments. You don't have that in the small companies that communists claim that they are in support of, or the mom and pop shops or whatever. You only hear this kind of talk, in like Google HR department. It's so funny. She said we have to, what was it? Like, she used the word equity, which is another one of those like little buzzwords that they love. Hang on, I'm gonna play this for just a second.
I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good, and we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it.
Right.
So we are going to be transitioning it. So we are going to be transitioning your relationship to property to a model of shared equity. What corporate HR nonsense is that? It's shrouding everything in this like very inoffensive language that if you have a couple of brain cells to rub together, you'll notice right away what they're actually saying. But I just find it really funny and really ironic that that's the way that these people talk now. Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I just got to say two things that came to my mind when I watched that video. First, the ownership of property is not fluid. It's more binary. You either own it or you don't. There's no like process of it. It's like, so there's that aspect. I also thought it was dripping with racism, because basically she was saying, if you really read between the lines, that in New York City, if you are not a white person, you probably don't have the wherewithal to own a home. Therefore, she's saying that those people are intellectually or they don't have the same work ethic, or they're intellectually inferior. Like, I'm trying to understand where, to connect those dots. But that's basically what she's, saying there, if you want to try to read between those lines. So it just goes to show how, I hate to bring this up, but the low expectations and all that kind of stuff of these people, because you know what? She thinks she's smarter than everybody else, but obviously she's not.
Yep. I wanted to point out another kind of irony from Mamdani's speech that he gave. We didn't have this part of the speech in our clip set, but it doesn't really matter. But later on, he talks about how like the city's skyscrapers are these great examples of the New York City's greatness or whatever, and the people. But those weren't built by government, were they? The Empire State Building was built by like an incorporated company staffed by businessmen who were executives at like DuPont and General Motors and banks. It's a for-profit office tower. The idea that you would point to these great, structures that literally built by capitalism, even early capitalism in the 1920s, 30s, when it was a little bit more Wild West with a lot of what they had going on there. And that is what built the great monuments of the best skyscrapers in New York City, like the Empire State Building. Not the government of New York, not regulators. The Lincoln Tunnel was built before there were real regulators, all of that stuff. So yeah, it's complete and utter nonsense. It's like a skinwalker. He wants to wear the outer shell of what people recognize as New York City, but on the inside, it's just rotten, corrupt, completely different from what the actual city is.
The premise behind what both Mamdani and his housing director are about is taking control of everything away from people who are motivated by profit and giving it to people who are motivated entirely by ideals. That sounds really smart. Sounds really cool. And the people standing behind them just applaud at literally every word at certain points, because they recognize the wonderful sentiment there. It's a sentiment. It's not a reality. It's not a truth. It's a sentiment. And what happens when you take away the profit motive and move toward idealism, human beings must become expendable. They must. You have to kill off the kulaks. You can't just have them hanging around, because Stalin himself said it. They'll take back that land if they have the chance. And so what happens is you turn people into, this is the funny thing. You're talking about too much attention to commodities, too much attention to material things. You're turning human beings into commodities and human beings into material things and saying they're in the way. They're in the way of the ideal. They and their selfish motives are in the way of the ideal. Again, we go back to Adam Smith, who said, it's not through ideals and through love of others that people create all the good things that they sell to one another. It's through their own self-interest. It's through the desire to better their own lives. And so because this whole mindset is completely out of line with reality, it ultimately always results in mass destruction. And that's where this is going. And I have a positive note to end on, which is that this will probably save New York State and New York City by depopulating them.
Well,
Well,
I mean, just to maybe tie a bow on this, you could sit here and make the economic argument. If you could just make the economic argument, this will not work. Rent control has not worked. The reason it hasn't worked in San Francisco, it has not worked in New York City, and it's because when you don't allow market forces to set prices based on the costs of creating those commodities, you distort the market and you make the market for that particular good worse for everybody. It has to be responsive to the free market. No central planner. There's no reason whatsoever. Again, trying to make the calm economic argument for this, which they will not listen to. but no central planner has enough information to set what the proper rent should be in a certain neighborhood in Queens and New York City. They just don't have that ability. Markets, the invisible hand, that is what sets the price that people can afford. You make more housing less affordable by instituting communism into the marketplace. And then, but in a moral sense, they think they have the moral high ground here because they are, and it goes back to the rhetoric we talked about all throughout on these videos that we played, this idea of the other, of the kulak as it was during the Bolshevik Revolution, of the people that are, that they see economics as a, as Chris said, a zero-sum game. The reason you don't have a better apartment is because that guy has the nice apartment and you should have that instead. That is not a morally good argument. That's a morally evil argument. And they are now, as Chris said earlier, this is not legal. He can't just go in there, you know, as a lot of people like to say on the right, come and take it. There's going to be a lot of property owners who are going to say, yeah, try, come and take it. And they'll go to the courts. And it's blatantly unconstitutional for the city of New York to just declare a piece of property to be dilapidated or in need of seizure for the good of the people. That's not constitutionally permissible in this country, at least not yet. So the key point here, even if it doesn't happen now, this is what they want to happen right now, but it could happen in the near future if these people gain more and more and more power.
One last thing, I agree with everything that Jim just said. And Sam wrote a paper about the affordability crisis. And one of the points that he makes in that is that we need more housing. So rent controls disincentivize more housing, because why would you build a new apartment building if you know that the government's just going to come in and put a ceiling on how much you can charge people? It just doesn't even make sense. So that is you know, the one and only solution is more housing, not more rent control, more housing.
Thank you for that plug, Chris. And I have to say, this paper is free and it's well worth the price.
Excellent.
Awesome. All right. Well, that is all the time we have today, unfortunately, you guys. Thank you, everyone, for your attention to these matters. We are live every week on Thursdays at noon Central on Rumble, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Jim, what do you have for our audience today?
I actually have to announce that there will be no Climate Realism show tomorrow for the first time in a while. That isn't a holiday weekend. So we just have schedules that are messed up. So no Climate Realism show tomorrow. We will be back the following Friday. So hope to see you there.
Come on,
All right, Sam.
Heartland.org and Life, Liberty, Property at stkarnick.substack.com.
Chris?
Heartland.org. I've been posting some really good opinion articles from authors, and also stoppingsocialism.com. So we got some good stuff up there too, please.
Yes, please go to stoppingsocialism.com. And I also have something to announce this week. All right, so we're about to enter June, the month leading up to July. This is the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding. And so I didn't run this by the panel, actually, but so now you guys are going to find out about it with the audience. I decided that for the next couple of weeks, as we get into June, leading up to the 4th, we are going to have a new segment on this show. That's a temporary segment.
No, God!
That will be a 1776 focus. We'll either do like a little historical tidbit or something, but I thought it would be fun to do something that celebrates this country, because we can get a little bit dragged down by all the negativity of the last couple of years of news. And so I thought that would be a fun way to celebrate 1776.
Linnea, I thought you were gonna announce an octagon tournament here for us.
Oh, heck yeah, that too.
I mean, they're building it at the White House. I mean, we can go and use it. I'm sure they wouldn't mind.
Yeah, for sure. I would love that. And also, you guys, I don't usually shill my Twitter account, but on x.com, my account at Linnea Lukin, I posted a reading list for Countdown to 250 or Countdown to 1776. And I think I did not compile it. It was compiled by people who offered suggestions to me in my on my Twitter account when I asked for them. And it is a super, super good reading list. So if you guys are interested in that, go look at that list and share it around, if you will.
Socialism
That
at a
is
glance
all.
on that reading list?
Huh?
Is socialism at a glance on that reading list?
No.
No, God!
What is that for? Socialism at a Glance is a terrific read. But yeah, this is more history focused. But yes, that is also very good. All right. So for audio listeners, you guys, please rate us well on whatever service you're using and leave a nice review. And thank you so much to all of our usual panel. We have a lot of fun. And also to our viewers. We will see you again next week.
Not dead!